Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our October 2016 customer webinar. Today, Christine Masters, our Director of Product Management, will walk you through the ins and outs of the new distribution platforms from Google, Facebook, and Apple, what they are, why they exist, and how you should respond. She'll also talk about the market forces that gave rise to distributed platforms and how BLOX CMS can help you attack these new distribution venues. I'm Aaron Gillette, Marketing Director at townnews.com. We'll cover the formal presentation in about 30 minutes, after which we'll take questions. At any point during the presentation, you can type your question into the chat box, but we'll hold off on answering them until the very end of the show. I know it's a good presentation, a deep presentation, so I'm not going to belabor the intro. Take it away, Christine.
Great, thank you so much. So do you see my next slide, Aaron? The agenda?
We're seeing it.
Okay, great. So today we're going to talk about, this is a new thing, and it's a really interesting kind of new force that is happening in our industry now. And I will say that we've been working on this probably for about a year at Town News and with several of our customers, and we don't have, and the industry as a whole doesn't have a lot of answers yet on what the best practices are for the industry and what the best practices are for individual papers. So what I'm going to do in this webinar is kind of just walk through the environment that is kind of spurring these things into the future, and I'll go over some of the technical details of what the main forms are and kind of how to work with them within Town News. I have a lot of slides related to that. I'm going to go over them very quickly, so hopefully it'll just give you a broad overview of the kind of the environment today. And then I'm going to talk about at the end just some of the different business strategies that we've seen from different types of publishers, and then just throw those out there as ideas, and something might spark for you as an individual media organization, how you should be dealing with it. So I'll give you some ideas, but again, I don't necessarily have the magic solution that everyone should do. It kind of depends on your use case and what the specific needs are for your publication, for your organization. So that's kind of a real brief background of that. So kind of to start out with, we're going to talk about some of the market forces that are happening in the industry today that is creating and causing these big tech companies to create these platforms. So, obviously on the internet, people are still very interested in content. This is something that a lot of these big tech companies are, perhaps they didn't understand this 3 years ago, but it's definitely something that, Facebook understands this, Google understands this, and like I said, they might not have fully grasped this, maybe 5 or 10 years ago, but they really understand now that content is where it's at. People are looking for content. People are looking for the content that you and your organization are creating on a daily basis. So they, being the big tech companies, Facebook, Google, even Apple, Twitter, they are trying to find more ways for customers to use their products, right? Which makes total sense. Of course they're going to do that. So they feel that bringing in more of the content that people are looking for, more of the information that people are looking for, bringing it into their platforms and making it easier for users to use is the way that they can get more users to be using their platforms. Again, it makes a lot of sense. We just have to make sure that doesn't hurt the publishing industry too much. We have to consider our own needs in this environment. So one of the aspects that is actually somewhat of a side effect of just these platforms kind of trying to push their platforms is that a lot of our users today are actually finding content through search, through social, or through an app, and the app is much less than search or social, and not through the publisher's homepage. This is something that we've seen as a trend in the last several years. Less and less users are actually coming directly into the homepage. They're actually, or directly into the index page even. We're seeing a very huge spike in the numbers that are coming directly into those article pages. So one kind of strategy that a lot of people have said is that we as media organizations should really be looking at where the audience is and making sure that our content goes in front of the audience, which is great, but we just have to make sure that we have our own needs in mind when we do that. And so that's part of what we're trying to figure out here today. But so this is like a big trend is, again, users coming into the article through social, through Twitter, through a search, and then coming directly to your site from there. And we have several strategies that are related to that at Town News, like having more content discovery from the article page and things like that. The second big issue that is really impacting the industry today, which is very obvious, is mobile. There is a huge increase in mobile use. That's where people are shopping, searching for content, just browsing the web is happening more and more on the phone. And I've said this in previous webinars, but Town News now sees more of our traffic on smartphone alone. So more than 50% of our traffic is smartphone alone than desktop or tablet. If you take tablet, which is about 10% or so, and add that to the smartphone, obviously then you have 60% content coming in through mobile devices, and then a small amount, about 40%, 38% coming in through desktop. That is shifting so quickly that it's definitely something that we want to keep an eye on. And like I said, we've talked about this in previous webinars, something that you should be really paying close attention to for your site specifically. I will say that one of the issues that we've been seeing in the industry is that mobile users have higher even though they're on a phone and they're not on a really high-speed internet connection on their desktop, even though they're on a phone, they have less patience a lot of times than desktop users do. They want things faster. They want things, they're on the bus and they've just got their phone and they want to get that instant information. And so we've seen that as mobile users, switch to the mobile platform, they actually have less patience for download times and ads and pop-ups, et cetera, than they would normally. So that is something that these tech companies like Facebook, Apple, Google are trying to capitalize on, where they're offering their platforms to their users as a way to get that same content, but faster and with fewer ads. That's obviously what the end user wants. They want the same content, but faster and with fewer ads. That's not necessarily what the publishers want, because you still want to make your ad revenue. So that's kind of the conundrum that we face in terms of dealing with these distributed platforms. You want your users to get the fastest content and the most content, and you want to be where the audience is, but we still need to have revenue for the publishing industry. So, but mobile obviously is a big impact on that. And we kind of already talked about speed. We have seen for both desktop and mobile that any increase in size of the page or delay of the amount of time that it takes for a page to load, you see a decrease in traffic. So that's something that, again, we just always have to keep in mind when building pages, when publishing content, when you're adding new widgets to the page, that the speed and the download time of that needs to definitely be taken into consideration. We have a lot of initiatives at Town News specifically related to optimizing the page, speeding up the page. The Flex templates, which are a very important part of our speed strategy, are a major element of that, and that we continue to work on. But the individual media organizations as well need to have their own strategy. We did a webinar about this. I think it was last month, maybe, or the month before, a couple months ago. We did a whole webinar about speed strategy, so you might want to check that out if you didn't get a chance to see that. So let's talk a little bit about distributed platforms. So some of the main platforms that are out there, and I'm actually not going to talk about all of them, but there are probably about 20 different ones that could be considered an external platform where you push your content off to that external platform and users can browse it there. Some of the main ones that people talk about, Google Amplified Mobile Pages is a very big one that we're paying really close attention to. And at Town News, we're actually doing a lot of work on the Google Amp platform at this point. We're probably seeing about 2 million page views a month from our various customers going through Google Amp, so that's a big one right there. Google Newsstand is a separate app that can be downloaded from Google Play. We're seeing a lot of usage of that. Facebook Instant Articles is relatively new in the last year. We do have support for that, and I'll talk about that in a second. And Apple News is something that Apple has just been pushing in the last 2 versions of its operating system. That is something that we're paying really close attention to and we're watching, and I'll talk about that a little bit. There are other ones. Snapchat Discover is something, again, where it's in the Snapchat application where publishers can put a special, let's say like a store, kind of storefront in the Snapchat Discover area. I'm not going to talk about that yet. That's for kind of specific publishers at this point in time, but it's something to watch. And also Twitter. You know, Twitter is a distributed platform where you're sending your information to Twitter. The main difference with Twitter is that most of the time, now this might not always be the strategy with Twitter, but most of the time that content links back to your site, so you get that page view. That's not necessarily the case with some of these other platforms. So that's something to watch there. I'm not going to talk about Twitter today. As of right now, that technology hasn't drastically changed. You're still talking about tweeting things and having them come back to your site, but that's something to definitely keep an eye on. So, and again, we don't necessarily know 100% the strategy that we would recommend. I think that at this point anyway, it's different for different publishers, and you really need to look at what your news model is. This is based on a study that was done by the Tao Center for Journalism, specifically about distributed platforms. They asked, I think they interviewed a couple hundred different publishers and asked what they were doing with these different distributed platforms. And there was a lot of kind of confusion from different media organizations as to how they should be working with these different platforms. Some of the, the bigger newspapers and the bigger broadcasters had a strategy related to this, but most publishers did not have a strategy at this time. I will also say that some of the tech companies are more friendly to publishers than others, and they might have a more publisher-friendly outlook than others do. And that's something to take into consideration when, kind of considering what your strategy would be. And another big issue is that publishers said in the survey was that they really wanted more data about how their content performs on these other platforms, how the customer was using them. A lot of these platforms don't give you the data, the user behavioral data from these platforms for you to use with your advertising or with other, behavioral things that you're doing. One of the things, Town News has a data management platform where we can actually track the behavior of users throughout your site, and then you can have that information as to what users are doing on your site, the types of content they're reading, and then you can target advertising to those specific users. You don't get that same information if they're going to another platform. So that type of information, that behavioral data that can be used to make money for your organization is not the same when you're going off to another platform. So that's definitely something that needs to be considered in when making decisions about this. And then, obviously you have to consider, how do you allocate resources? A lot of the large papers are actually writing different content, producing different content for some of these other platforms. Snapchat Discover, for example, CNN has its own Snapchat Discover team, and that's not realistic, obviously, for a lot of media organizations. And I kind of talked a little bit about, who owns the user, who gets the data from that user. That's your user. That user has come to your content to view the content that you created, and really you should have the benefit of that. And that's not always the case with some of these platforms. So again, those are some of the big concerns that publishers brought up in this survey. They're really good concerns, and it's something that we need to, as an industry, watch going forward. So, and this is a little bit hard to see, but I just wanted to show this to you as kind of just a neat little graph that was in that survey. These are some publishers down the side here. So you see, Washington Post, Fox Media, there's CNN, Fox News, Huffington Post. And then these are just various different distributed platforms. And this just kind of shows you how many of these distributed platforms these publishers are participating with. So you can see CNN here pushes their content out to pretty much every distributed content. There are, Vox Media is still doing a lot of them, but significantly less. So the point in kind of showing this slide is just that there's a lot of different distributed platforms out there, and a lot of big publishers are experimenting with these different platforms and trying to see what to do with them. This is also a really good graph that shows this is the blue part is essentially Facebook instant articles using the Facebook content, and the orange part is where they push that to Facebook but require the user linked back to their site. So this is kind of a good representation of the different strategies taken by different media organizations when dealing with the distributed platform of Facebook. But you can see here that Washington Post, for example, a large majority of they are participating very heavily with Facebook instant articles. The content is actually going off to Facebook and staying on Facebook so that the user gets an instant experience, but they're not coming back to the Washington Post site. So everything that's blue means that they're staying on the Facebook site and not coming back to the Washington Post site for that content. Whereas you can see, Vice News is the opposite. They're doing very little instant content, but a lot of their content is just pushed to Facebook as a summary and then linked back to the Vice News site. So again, I'm just showing you this slide to kind of show you that there are a lot of different strategies going on in the marketplace right now. This last one, again, just shows the participation with different types of, these are the different types of distributed vendors. And you can see for each of these specific media organizations how they are interacting with the different platforms. So CNN is pushing a lot of things to Apple News. Then this is Facebook. This is Snapchat, Discover, Twitter. So you can see that they're all interacting with those platforms in different ways. So now we're going to go over some of the platforms very quickly. And like I said, I have a lot of slides related to this, so I'm going to go over them quite fast. So let's talk about Facebook Instant Articles first. Facebook Instant Articles is it's a feature in the Facebook site where you actually send Facebook a specialized RSS feed. It is hosted at the Facebook site, so they actually host it on their servers. And when a user clicks on a news item in their news feed, it pops up instantly because it's hosted on the Facebook servers. It pops up instantly. They read the articles, and then they might go after your site if there's some additional links or some additional related content on there. But in general, they're just going to pop up the story and close the story. The benefit to users, obviously, is that this is instant. When they click on it, they see the content immediately. There's a little lightning bolt symbol that lets them know that that's an instant article. And the theory is that Facebook will discuss is that the faster the articles go, the more content the user will ingest, the better it is for the media organization. I don't know yet if that's always true for every media organization. We are still waiting to see if the speed from instant articles equates to more articles and how many more are we talking, and then we can kind of do the math on the revenue there. But that's some data that we're still kind of waiting to see. The benefit to publishers, obviously, is that the user will look at the content more, and then you get more ad impressions. Another strategy that some publishers are using is maybe you're not going to see as many ads as you would on a desktop or mobile version of the page, but you might be able to convert that user to sign up for a newsletter, to subscribe to the paper, or some other kind of to like your Facebook page. You might be able to convert them to some other paradigm of working with your organization where you can then make better use of that relationship over time. So that's another strategy a lot of publishers are using. Facebook does allow ads. They have their own ads that can show into the story itself. They typically have 3 ads there, but for longer stories, they actually will add additional ad spots as the story goes down the page. So I've talked to several publishers that are using instant articles now, and they have seen, most of our publishers, I have one publisher that said they got very low CPMs with the Facebook network ads, and I've had 2 publishers say that they had very high CPMs for the Facebook audience ads. So Facebook has something called the Facebook Audience Network, where they take information, it's like a DMP, like Town News, the Town News IQ program, but it actually uses the Facebook user data. So the data that individual user has added to their Facebook profile, their gender, their age, their location, their interests, they use all of that information for targeted advertising. Because that's really good information, that ends up being, in theory, a higher CPM. So we're getting a little bit of mixed reviews as to whether or not that higher CPM is a reality, but that is part of the stated benefit of this. And tracking is, I'm going to talk about tracking for all of these different things. Tracking is very important. You can put Google Analytics on the Facebook Instant Articles page so you can see, you can count that towards your traffic. Even though it's not hosted on your site, your Google Analytics will show there. BLOX does have a specialized RSS feed for instant articles. It's in our documentation site. So if you go in there and just search for Facebook Instant Articles, you'll find the page, and it talks about essentially how to set that up. I will note specifically with Facebook Instant Articles, because it is a feed coming out of your site, you can choose specifically the content that goes for your site. So you can choose to have like a site tag specifically related to Facebook Instant Articles, and then you can just choose maybe 3 or 5 different articles per day, and only those become instant in the Facebook site, and then the rest of your content can be just normal. So that might be something that you can kind of play with either for experimentation purposes or for strategic purposes. We have noticed that Facebook is difficult to get approved. There's a big manual approval process that you have to go through to actually be approved for this. We've had very few publishers make it all the way through the process, but it is possible. And the main reason is that a lot of people are put HTML or different things inside of their content, and that does not get approved with Facebook. So it is difficult to go through and get approved. But one of the things to look at is if you are a publisher who's getting 30% of your total site traffic referral from Facebook, if you turn on Facebook Instant Articles for 100% of your content, that means that, and this is only on mobile only, so that means that, let's say 50% of your Facebook referrals will then be converted to Facebook Instant Articles. So that's kind of the math that you have to do at your organization. Is it okay that 15% of your traffic is converted to Facebook Instant Articles? Does the revenue that you get from the Facebook audience, the increased CPMs, offset that change of traffic? So that's the main decision with the Facebook Instant Article. Google AMP is the next one. This stands for Google Accelerated Mobile Pages, so it's specifically for mobile. This is something that we support at Town News. We've actually been working on this for about a year, and we have lots of publishers that are doing this now. Essentially, it is a specially formatted HTML page that is a different version of your web page. When Google comes to your site to scrape your page, they will recognize that you have Google AMP set up. And then when a user does a search from Google, again, on their phone only, when they do a search in Google, it will present to that user the Google AMP page instead of the Google mobile page or the Google desktop page. So they actually will surface the Google AMP content so that users click on it and they go to the AMP content first. The benefits to the user, obviously, it loads very quickly. Users, when they get this little carousel of information, users can actually swipe between the articles once they pop up the article and it's live. They can left swipe or right swipe to go between the various publishers that have the same search. So it's a very easy interface, and it's very fast for the users. The benefits to publishers, we don't 100% know how far Google is going to push this within their search results. Right now, they have stated that there is no SEO benefit yet for Google AMP pages, but it is very possible that in the future they might give an SEO boost to these pages. Obviously, there's the speed aspect, which they do boost for speed, or at least penalize for speed. And getting the, knowing that this publisher has an instant version of their page, it could spur Google to provide a benefit to that in the future. Right now, there is a carousel, a top news carousel. If you do a search for Mars and you have a story that shows up within the top news for Mars for Google, you could get into that carousel, and there's a page view boost, obviously with users seeing that content in the carousel and jumping to your site from there. Monetization, obviously they support Google DSP, not surprisingly, and you can put the Google DSP ads inside of the Google AMP page. There are Outbrain and some other revenue generating services, but any specific code that is added to that page has to be approved by Google. So things like BLOX Ad Manager, we have not yet gone through the process of having Google review and incorporate a plugin for Ad Manager. So if you are currently using Ad Manager ads on your main site, we would recommend setting up DSP ads just for your Google AMP integration. And that's something that we can help you with. We can do our Google DSP IQ ads and have them show in there instead, even if you're using Ad Manager. Tracking Google Analytics is allowed on these pages. There are also plugins for other services such as Chartbeat, but anything on that page has to be specifically approved by Google. And as I mentioned, Town News has full integration with Google AMP. We actually have a URL property that you can go in and set up on the individual pages where you want to participate with Google AMP. You can either do it on the top level, so everything is part of Google AMP, or you can do it on an individual section. If you're just starting out and you're just kind of experimenting with this, I would recommend that try it on a specific section. Watch as you can actually search for these things in Google Analytics. Just look for the .amp extension, and you can see, if you just did, for example, the entertainment section, you can see the entertainment section start to be amplified, is what they call it, and then you can see those page views start being converted, and then see whether or not it works for you. If you like it, you can experience it yourself as a user, see what it's like, and then you can do that on an experimental basis on a per URL section, a per URL basis, and then you can just, if you like it or you don't like it, you can turn it on or turn it off altogether. I would also recommend that you tie in your account to Google Webmaster Tools. There are ways that you can do this within the BLOX interface, and you can actually see a report of your Google AMP pages in your Google Webmaster Tools. So there's an AMP section there, and you can see if they're reading the pages or if they're generating errors or if they have any indexing problems with them, etc. So it's really good feedback that you get from that. Other insights, again, Google is just like Facebook. They are very picky about HTML in the articles. So the main problem that we see with publishers is if they actually put HTML inside of their articles and then that gets into the feed, then those pages will likely be rejected. So you can't have any HTML, can't have any side things going on inside of the actual article page itself, or you might get that page won't be scraped. I should also notice that both Facebook Instant Articles and Google AMP are Flex only. So if you're on Zen templates, I would highly recommend talking to your sales rep about getting the Flex stuff installed for your site. Google Newsstand is an app that Google has in the Google Play Store. This is essentially a specialized RSS feed coming from BLOX, and we can set that up. Again, you can just Google or look at our doc site for this, and then you can get the information about how to set that up. Benefits to the user, obviously the news is really, really fast. It's in a nice app, it's instant. The user can subscribe to the topics that they're interested in. For the publisher, what we have seen thus far for the publishers that are working with Google Newsstand is it appears to be unduplicated audience. So this is a new audience that is browsing through the app for their content, and they're not typically the same people that are going to the web. We don't see a big drop-off of traffic on the web when you push your content to Google Newsstand. There is a subscription model, so if you wanted to set up subscription through there, they can do that, and then that way people can subscribe to your news and get your news through their app. We do see that the publisher or that the users have very high engagement within this app. They look at a lot of content, so that's good, but the usage is much lower, obviously, than the web. They do support DSP ads, and obviously you get revenue from subscription, and they do support Google Analytics. When you look in your Google Analytics for Google Newsstand, it's under a path called magazines, so you can see all of your Google Newsstand traffic in Google Analytics that way. And again, there is a specialized feed. You can just search through our docs to find that. You just go in and create an account within the publisher system for Google Newsstand, and you can start submitting your content and having it go through that way. I kind of started talking about high page views, unduplicated audience. I will say that there is kind of a front page to Google Newsstand, and if you happen to get an article that shows up on the front page, you might get a big boost of traffic that way. So Apple News is very similar to Google Newsstand. It's kind of the Apple version of that. It is a native app in iOS. They launched it just 2 versions ago. You can personalize. This is kind of a screenshot showing the different publishers that you can sign up for. They also now have breaking news notifications and push notifications for the application, and there is an iTunes subscription model. Obviously, the users, it's benefit because they can sign up for things they're interested in, specific publications they're interested in. It's got a really nice, clean, user-friendly interface, and very easy to read your content and have that handled through your iTunes account. Again, we feel that this is unduplicated content, unduplicated audience. These are not typically the same users who are coming to your website to get information. So that's an interesting thing. And again, there are different animations and a really clean interface to enhance your news in this platform. We do have, there are ads in the Apple News platform, but it only works with Apple News. You only get monetized ads if you're using a special platform called Apple News Format. So there's essentially 2 ways to work with Apple News. You can send them an RSS feed, which we have available now, or you can use this Apple News Format, which Town News is working on as we speak. We don't have the Apple News Format yet. We are working on that. So if you want to participate with Apple News at this time, you would have to send them an RSS feed. And when you do an RSS feed, you don't get ads or analytics. So that I would recommend only doing that on an experimental basis right now. There might be a specific publication that you want to push there or a specific section that you want to push there. But in general, this is something that we're working on. We're experimenting with a couple publishers on this now, and we hope to have that out. We're still kind of aiming for this year, but it should be in the next couple months. As I mentioned, if you're using the Apple News Format, there is a publisher admin tool where you can see your traffic there. If you're doing with an RSS feed only, you don't see the traffic from that in your analytics. As I mentioned, we don't support this yet, but it is in development. If you wanted to do an RSS feed now, that is something that you could set up. You can just take a standard RSS feed from BLOX and then set within the Apple News publisher system. So that's kind of the walkthrough of the top 4 different distributed content services. So let's talk about a couple of different strategies. I talked about this a little bit as I touched on various things as we were walking through this, but the main thing is to just really do the math on what is your revenue per page on your standard mobile or desktop site. Let's say it's $20 per 1,000. And if you converted some of your traffic over to either Google AMP or Facebook Instant Articles or any of these, how much money are you going to lose per page? And if you lose, let's say $10 per page, how many additional pages would you have to make through better user engagement to make up that cost. And that's kind of where the math comes in for this. But that being said, you as a media organization might have a different goal to either attract new users, to get your information out there. You might be an organization, or you might have a specific section that doesn't have any ads. If you don't have any ads, then that changes the paradigm for that algorithm, basically, in terms of how much money you make per page. Now you're talking about sending content off to Facebook Instant Articles, but you don't have to worry about losing the monetization of that page, and that changes the equation. So if you are an organization that, like maybe a college paper that doesn't sell advertising, this might have a different paradigm for you. It might be a different thing for you. A couple of other ideas along those lines. For press releases, there might be a specific section where you publish press releases from local businesses or blogs from local businesses. Those types of things, you could set up that only those get sent to Facebook Instant Articles. And then that is a service that you provide to the businesses in your area that that will be a service to those businesses. So you can provide the publishing mechanism for those businesses to make their content instant or their Google AMP instant. So that's something that you can use our system to help benefit your local businesses by publishing their content for them. Just even through our business directory product, for example. User content, this might be something that you don't typically monetize or have a lot of ads on. Maybe they're just programmatic ads, you don't sell local ads there. That might be something that you want to convert over to distributed content, or other sponsored articles. This is an example of a publisher who is essentially using instant articles for their sponsored content. So they have a specific section for sponsored content, and they flag that section and just send that section off to Facebook Instant Articles. So as part of their sponsored article offering, Facebook Instant Articles Google AMP is part of the service that they provide to that business. Another idea here, and again, we've talked about this a little bit, but you want to do that math. What is your revenue per page, and what would it be versus a distributed platform? And then just do that math. If you think that you're going to get, if you only have 3 ads on a page now, and you're going to have the same 3 ads on Facebook, that might be an easier conversion for you, that you're still going to get the traffic counted to your analytics. You're still going to get 3 ads per page. That might be an easier calculation for you. So that's just something to look at. What are the CPMs, and what's the specific model there for your organization? A couple of other ideas here is I talked to some publishers who talked about the idea of choosing specific articles on a per day basis that they would then distribute, but other content they would not. So for example, the theory is you might want to make some viral content, really big, either big news or funny news or really interesting news that tends to be viral, tends to get shared. I think we all kind of can judge now which things have a good chance of going viral and which do not. It is a possible strategy that you could say, we are going to make these 5 articles per day. These are going to be our distributed content articles. The rest of the articles we are not going to distribute, and you'll have to come back to our site to read those. But these ones we're going to put out there almost as a marketing tool to get users, again, try to convert users to newsletters, etc. And then the rest of them would be coming back to the site to specifically view that content on your site. Another idea, again, just looking at your particular model, can you convert those users over to another relationship with you? Can you have them sign up for a newsletter, sign up for liking your Facebook page, etc. And then it's actually an expenditure that you're spending money by losing some ad revenue by getting the content out there, but you're gaining customers and gaining loyalty through distributing that content. And lastly, just consider how users interact with your pages. Again, they're coming in through search or social. they no longer are going to that main homepage. We have a lot of strategies here at Town News where we're trying to use content discovery to convert that one page view into two. So make sure that, those types of things are working on that instant platform. We have, for example, Outbrain content on our Google AMP pages. If you turn that on, that will be a way to make revenue and also a way to promote other content from your site. So those are all considerations that you can make there as well. So just as a quick overview here, we have a lot of support for these distributed platforms at Town News. I would definitely recommend looking into them, looking into our docs and how to set them up and experiment with them, come up with a strategy for your individual organization as to how you want to work with these. Definitely you can experiment on a per article basis or a per section basis and just see how it works for you. And then just consider your specific business models. What types of things do you need in terms of your revenue per page? And, if you're an industry blog or if you have a parenting blog that might have a different paradigm for that different section, you might consider those different publications have different goals, and then you might consider those on a per publication basis. But again, we do have support now for Google Newsstand, Facebook Instant Articles, and Google AMP. Those are supported and available now, and we are working on the Apple News format. And I think I'll pass that over to Aaron.
Thanks, Christine. You can actually go back to the previous slide. We'll do a little Q&A now. A few questions have already come in. Now would be a good time to type a question into the question box if you have one. I'll just get started working through these. Does the recently announced Yahoo Newsroom app fit into these distributed platforms as well?
Yeah, I mean, we are looking at that right now. So we are talking to a couple of publishers who are going to experiment with that. So I can't say definitively, if that's going to be the same as some of the existing ones, but we will be watching that and have more information about that as well. That's a good question.
This is more of a comment. It would be cool if you could pick and choose things that get pushed to Facebook Instant Articles through the social broadcast panel in BLOX CMS. Is that something? That
could be a possibility. Yeah, I mean, we do offer now, as I said, the Facebook Instant Articles is essentially an RSS feed coming out of your site. So what I've actually set up with a couple of papers is that we use a site tag so that they would actually apply a site tag called Facebook, for example, to just the articles that they want to push, and just go through and you can batch edit them and apply the Facebook tag. And then the search that you perform that would generate the RSS feed is only for that specific site tag, and then that is a way that you can just pick and choose which articles go to Facebook.
Okay. Does metering integrate with Google AMP, or will metering integrate with Google AMP in the future?
That is a really good question. I should talk about that for a second here. For Google AMP actually just in the last couple of months, or maybe a month here, a couple of weeks here, have launched their own metering integration. So this is something that they got. They are a very publisher-friendly organization, and they heard from their users, publishers, that they really had to have some kind of metering/subscription model on the Google AMP, or else people weren't going to use it. So they actually just released a spec for how to integrate with their new metering platform. It is extremely different than what Town News offers, and so we actually have to do software changes to integrate with that. But we do have that as something we're looking into. It is on our roadmap, but to be totally honest, it's actually changed a couple times since they've released it already. It's very, very new. But we are looking at that very closely. So that is something that we will likely offer, but I can't yet say how soon it will be, but it's something that we're looking at. For Facebook very clearly thus far has said that they have zero plans of having any kind of integration with subscription or metering, it is unlikely that they will offer that, in my opinion. That could change, but they do not offer it now. It is not allowed now. They will not approve you if they think that you are, they actually, one of the things that they do when they have their manual approval process is they are specifically looking for people who are publishing shortened content to Facebook with the intention of you clicking on it in Facebook and then clicking through to the full article on your site. They do not want that to happen, and they are specifically looking for people trying to create that model and will not approve them. So they really want their users to read your content on their site and never go to your site, essentially. So that's kind of their specific model. That might change over time, especially as publishers put pressure on them. But as of right now, that is their model. They want to absorb the content. They'll give you ads, they'll give you analytics, but they absorb the content, host it on their site, and have no plans to offer any kind of subscription or metering that we know of at this time.
Okay, this is related to the last question. It's I think a little more of a philosophical question. We have subscription-based content. Using these distribution platforms would essentially be giving our articles away for free, wouldn't it?
Right. Yes. Yeah. And we do have actually several publishers who have either metering or a subscription model right now, and yeah, they are essentially giving this content out to this other audience for free. So again, it depends on your specific model. It might be on a per section basis. It might be on a per blog basis. If you have a different blog, that would change your strategy for that. But yeah, if you have a paywall, it is very likely that a lot of these things you would not be interested in participating at this time. I will say though that, again, look at your different sections, look at your parenting blog or your user blog or your business directory. If you have business directory posts that are made through your business directory system, if that's something that you offer to businesses, that might be something that you could use there. You could also, again, on a daily basis or a weekly basis, just choose one or two stories that meet a specific criteria that you want to essentially give away for marketing purposes, whether it's breaking news or just funny content. And then those types of things go out into the wild, go into these distributed platforms. And then with the hope of either A, learning from the process, experimenting, or B, driving traffic back to your site through promotional, through other means of, signing up for a mailing list, those types of things, liking your Facebook page, etc. So that is something that, and that's the big question right now is, how do I, as a publisher, play friendly with the internet and play friendly with these distributed content, but yet still owning my traffic and still owning my content? That's the big question that we don't have the answer to. So that's where it really depends on your organization, your models, and how you develop content. There might be competitive reasons why you may want to participate or want to not participate. If you're in a competitive market, or if you are the only newspaper in your town, that equation might be different for you. So yeah, that is definitely something to consider on a per section basis and a per publisher basis, what your strategy should be when looking at these things. And then, Town News, we are really doing a lot of investigation on this currently, and we are working with a lot of publishers who have a lot of different strategies related to these. So as we go forward and as we learn new things, we will be trying to keep you guys up to date with, number one, what we support, and number two, any strategies that we find that are benefit. We'll be doing customer testimonials, we'll be doing blog posts as we find out more information. So it might be something for your particular organization to wait and see as other successful models are made available, how you want to participate. But for now, definitely look at this. You might want to experiment with some things, and then just look at your business models if there's any type of sections or any type of specific stories that you feel might really benefit from this, and then the other ones you might have a wait and see strategy.
Are there any plans to develop a way to have separate release times for social media / distributed channels and the main website?
We do have that in as a feature request right now. There's several different reasons why people want to do that. Some want to just stagger their Facebook posts. Some want to, embargo social in favor of the web presence. So there's a couple of different models for that, but we do have that in as a feature request, so we are looking at that.
Is townnews.com considering adding SMS as a distribution platform?
We are. We actually have, we do have an SMS service now. We have a couple people using that, where essentially it operates similarly to our email reach application, where you can set up a text list, essentially, that users can sign up for the text and then can receive text. The main thing that I would say, we actually offer both a local number sign up, which is relatively inexpensive, but it's slower. And we also offer a short code where you actually have to buy a short code for your organization. And then that is that's much faster. You can send many, many texts at once. Otherwise, the phone companies limit you. So if you wanted to do something that was a really big basis, we would recommend probably getting the SMS short code option. But we do have local numbers that you can ask your sales rep for more information about that. But I will say that one of the things that is also on our roadmap is, somebody already mentioned the social broadcast feature. We do have a feature request in for being able to text out a story as well. So being able to do a social broadcast to the SMS list feature. Right now, the SMS list feature is just an individual push for that individual text message. It doesn't happen from within the editorial system, but that's something that we have had discussions on adding. It's a future request that's in right now. But yeah, ask your sales rep for more information about that, and we can talk about that more offline if that's something you're interested in.
Do you have any visual examples of existing Town News publishers using BLOX CMS to publish to these platforms? I'm thinking specifically of a finished product example of a Facebook instant article.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say a couple of things. First is Billings Gazette has I don't want to speak on their behalf too much, but they have a very aggressive experimentation model with a lot of these different systems. So you can look at their Facebook page on, again, you have to be on mobile. So you have to be on mobile in the Facebook app. But if you go to their site, you can see that on a per week basis, they pick and choose which articles they want to go to Facebook. Also the Town News site, I don't know if you want to talk about this, Erin, but the Town News site, if you go to our Facebook page, and you should definitely follow our Facebook page. But if you go to our Facebook page, a large number of our blog posts are also Facebook instant articles. So you can see, if you're on the phone in the Facebook app and you go to the Town News Facebook page, you'll see that a lot of our blog posts are instant also.
Yes. I think you covered it.
Okay.
Nice.
But I mean, I will say for the Google AMP stuff, if you do a search if you are on your phone, obviously the Safari, whatever, and then you go to google.com and you do a search for Billings Gazette, depending on how it triggers it, but you should be able to click on any of their news, and you'll see the Google AMP version of that as well. Obviously, if you look at Washington Post or any of those things, you'll see the Google AMP version of that as well.
Okay, and one final, not exactly a question, but a comment. Kudos, by the way, for pursuing distributed platforms. I can't wait to wake up and see our publication on Apple News every morning.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Okay, you can.
And just really quickly on that, and I kind of mentioned this already, but we totally understand as a service provider to the publishing industry that even though we don't necessarily have 100% of the answers for what exactly you should do, we know that this is something that's changing in the industry right now, and we as a service to our customers are just trying to really stay in tune with these things. And I see in the future that some of these tech companies might push these things further, and it might be that, kind of like what you're saying, one day you wake up and you find that Google is converting all of its search results traffic over to AMP, and you have to be there today, and we're ready for that. So you might not have the model or the business strategy yet for participating, but when that day comes that you need to be there, we are there for you. So we are working on this stuff in advance of where we as an industry are, just so that we can be ready on that day that, whatever reason the business model makes sense for you, and then we will have that ready.
Great stuff, Christine. You can go ahead and flip to the next slide. If you need help setting up any of the distributed platforms we've talked about today, or help with anything else at all, you can visit help.bloxcms.com or call support at 800-293-9576. If you don't have any of the items that we've talked about today, like Flex templates, for example, give your sales rep a call. The partner community is a great place to share ideas and learn from other BLOX CMS users, and that's at community.townnews.com. And of course, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. You can also subscribe to all of our email blasts by visiting townnews.com, clicking on the news link in the menu, and entering your email address in the sidebar and selecting the items you'd like to subscribe to. Looks like that is all we have for today. So thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll be reaching out to you soon for our November webinar. Thanks everyone. See you next month.